Well, hello, Eric. This is the Eric McAlister that we've been waiting for all season. Oh, yeah, it's locked on Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics, Monday through Friday and Saturday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, and 817 Raised. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On Horned Frogs your first listen after the game. Now, we're going to wrap up today's episode looking at the defining plays. We're going to be in and out for you, defining plays from this game. And quite frankly, with all of the twists and turns, ups and downs, second guesses, this is a game that has a lot of defining plays. But there is not a player that is more defining than Eric McAlister. Now, if you see on the YouTube side of things, I do have my phone sitting right here because one of the things that we're going to have to talk about after it comes to McAlister is the health of Josh Hoover. I got my notifications on, hoping that in some way I get an answer so that I can bring it to you. Sonny Dykes is currently talking to the media, so maybe we'll be able to get an answer about where Josh Hoover stands. If not, we'll still talk about it at the end of segment one. But today's episode is all about Eric McAlister. And I don't just mean segment one. He'll be a big part of the defining plays as well. How do you discuss the 2025 Iron Skillet without talking about the wide receiver that dominated the game? Let me go ahead and put this graphic up real quick for you. Now, Eric McAlister is without a doubt our 2025 Iron Skillet MVP. This doesn't go to anyone else. This is clearly McAlister's award. He ended with, that was supposed to say, eight catches for 254 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. And when you look at what McAlister did in relation to all of the other receiving threats that TCU has, McAlister has 8 of the catches that are 28 of the 22 catches. He has 254 of the 379 yards, and he has 3 of the 5 touchdowns on the day. So when you're talking about McAlister, what's funny about his performance is that any quarterback, minus the completions being replaced for receptions, when you look at McAlister's day, if a quarterback had those numbers, let's say you had more completions than, those receptions, but sprinkle it in. If a quarterback had 254 yards and 3 touchdowns, we'd say that that was a pretty solid day. We'd say that that was a pretty good performance by that quarterback. McAlister did all of that by himself from the receiving department. So let's give a shout out to him. He is without a doubt our player of the game. And I'll make sure that those graphics are the proper way next time that we do this. But Eric McAlister, a dog. Eric McAlister, the defining portion of this game. When you look at what he's done early in the season, I think a lot of people wanted more. A lot of people were clamoring for more from Eric McAlister. And the interesting thing is the difference between coaches and players, coaches and fans, is that fans are ready to give up. Fans are ready to move on to the new shiny toy. Fans are ready to divert their attention somewhere else because they don't have the game plan to get McAlister back into the rhythm. And I said this needed to happen last week. It didn't. I guess we saved it for the right time because Eric McAlister and his big time performance is the reason that the Horned Frogs were able to retire the Iron Skillet, or pause it. Let's not say retire, but pause the Iron Skillet with it in their possession. This is interesting. This is interesting to me. We're going to get into some of these comments. So Hoover for Heisman, make sure you stay around. We are going to get in. Okay. Appreciate it. Okay. Hoover for Heisman says that Josh Hoover went into the interview after the game and said he just cramped up for 20 seconds. So that is 100% great news. Thank you for that update. These are things that I really do need because I'm recording as the press conferences are going on. So I don't get to get that information directly. But Hoover for Heisman says that Josh Hoover is okay. It's just a cramp. And there's really nothing to be concerned about. But back to McAlister, because to me, Eric McAlister not only had a great performance, it really is a great story because the first couple of games of the season did not go the way that McAlister was looking for. Eric McAlister comes in with a high standard because you're looking at a player who was expected to be the number one threat in a receiving core that lost a lot of talent into the draft, lost a lot of talent last year. And in game one, he just didn't do it. 3 catches for 20 yards. Game two, 2 catches for 46 yards. He had 8 catches by himself this game. So you're talking about the first 2, 5 catches. This game, 8 catches. He only has 66 yards in the first 2 games. This time he, let's see, quadrupled it. Is that a quadruple? It's near. It's not quite a quadruple, but it's near. You looking at a guy who has 66 yards and then turned it to 254. That's a quarter century right there. But Eric McAlister, great game. Eric McAlister had 3 touchdowns, and my favorite was the second one because it showed you everything you could want out of a wide receiver on that play. He showed the hands, he showed the physicality, and he showed the speed. And those are 3 things that we know he has. And we focus a lot on the speed of McAlister, the ability to get downfield, and he did that. He was able to stretch the field. He had plays 20 yards downfield that he caught. But I think that my favorite play by him, it's close. He had like 3 play of the game qualifying moments, but I would say my favorite was that second touchdown because it was on 3rd down. It was a pass that when caught, you just assume it was going to be a first down and the Frogs keep moving. But he caught the ball, shrugged off the guy, took a safety, hit him, moved off of him, gave him a little bit of a stiff arm, and he really stretched the play downfield. I think it was about 70 yards. This was a really impressive performance by the wide receiver who a lot of people were questioning, was he going to be the number one guy? And listen, I'm not above that. I was questioning it. I said with one more game in which Dwyer looked better than McAlister, I'd be ready to say that Dwyer was the number one receiver. But McAlister showed that when you really talk about who's the top guy, it doesn't matter because they have 2 studs. They have 2 studs on the outside if you're TCU. And what's interesting is that each game that they played, they've had a different star. It's almost like the Migos album, right? So you have the first game, you have Dwyer. And then you have the second game, you have Manjack. Then the last game, you get McAlister. Now, there's been 3 games, 3 wide receivers stand out. And, I mean, you could throw Ed Small in there as well, but that's, like I said, the Migos album where you go offset, or excuse me, you go Quavo, then you go offset, then you go takeoff. So you're looking at 3 different games, 3 different albums, 3 different stars. And it not only shows that each of these players are capable in their own right, it shows you that all of these players can take over if they need to. Once again, we're going to get to some of these questions in a little bit. Yes, he did almost have. Can I flip this up here? Oh, so this is my first really live, and we're going with a lot of questions. But yeah, he did nearly have 2 touchdowns. And honestly, when it came to McAlister, before those last 2 touchdowns, I wasn't necessarily ready to come in and crown him. Ironically, that's exactly what happened after his 3rd touchdown. One of his teammates walked up and put the crown on his head. But I wasn't ready to crown McAlister after that first half. I was actually really ready to come on here on Monday and say he had a good game, but I wanted more because he did almost have 2 touchdowns. I think that one was taken from him and one he let slip through his fingers, but it was going to be a completely different conversation because I thought he had some plays where he let them slip a little bit, but all in all, he came in and he delivered, and he delivered at the end of the day because at the end of the game, he made 2 touchdowns. At the end of the game, when TCU needed their moment, 2 touchdowns. Both looked very similar. Slant passes that end up going for a long distance. Yeah, I don't know how they didn't take a look at that. But as we push forward, that Eric McAlister touchdown that wasn't called, we're going to take a look at that because we have about 7 plays that were defining moments in this game. And then we're going to try to answer at least one more question. Hoover for Heisman has a good one that I want to make sure that I get to as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Now, you can just move through life or you can find things that move you. It's your choice. You can choose to get out there. Choose your people. You can choose to go for it. Like, really, go for it. Just choose to do something that moves you. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by DoorDash. It's the weekend and it's time to look and crown this week's MVP Is it a question on who delivered powered by DoorDash? We can go ahead and give that to Eric McAlister. He is our player of the game. He is the big time player from the 2025 Iron Skillet and is the biggest reason that the Frogs won. You want me to narrow it down to one play? How do I do that? I've already talked about the catch and run slant. So how about we talk about that sky high ball that came down in which Eric McAlister tracked it beautifully and it led to his third touchdown of the game. If that play could have easily been an interception, if that play would have went a different way, who knows where we would be looking at today? Who knows what we will be looking at today? But just like McAlister delivered for the Frogs, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you can save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Today's episode is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors each. 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. So no more having to sit there and just sip your drink, sip your drink, sip your drink. I'm trying to wake up. Okay, let me go to the one shot, boom, and you going through your day smoothly. Why do you reach for a 5 Hour Energy shot? Maybe it's a slow morning, maybe it's a late night. Either way, 5 Hour Energy is going to push you through. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs, thank you for joining for the instant reaction from the 2025 Iron Skillet. These are the plays that define the game, and some of them encapsulate bigger moments than just one play. I thought that Josh Hoover's quarterback draw on 4th and 5, we're going to start and kind of go in chronological order because I was writing them down as I went. But Josh Hoover's draw on 4th and 5 was really a defining moment because it showcased what he was able to do with his legs throughout the game, especially early. Early in the game, you saw Josh Hoover be a quarterback who was able to move. That first touchdown to Eric McAlister, he was sprinting out to his right, and I didn't think he was going to get that ball to him. I thought that it was a wonky angle. I thought that the defensive back from SMU had a pretty solid look on the ball. I thought that, honestly, to be able to get it over that defensive back, to be able to get it there on the run, that was a highlight play by Hoover. And it was something that really, in my opinion, encapsulated where he was early in the game. And that was showcasing that my legs are a threat as well. That's what we talked about with Kevin Jennings. And it did come into play with the Mustang quarterback. But we did not talk about that with Josh Hoover. So it was nice to see someone who says, I packed that thing too. Eric McAlister's touchdown, it turned into an interception. This is one of the plays that we talked about earlier where that should have been a touchdown on a fade ball, but he ended up letting it slip through his hands. I thought at that moment, this game could have felt way more comfortable. It could have been a wider margin for the Frogs. I thought that going into halftime, if you catch that ball and you're able to go up, I think maybe 11 points at the time, I believe they were up 4. A touchdown would have put them up 11, including the extra point. If you're able to go down with that game or that touchdown, and you go into that game at halftime with that score, I'm sure you're feeling more comfy. But that dropped interception, that dropped touchdown, it turned into an interception. It really did put a pause on momentum. And seeing how the Frogs came out of halftime, that would have been a nice little cushion to have because you did slow it down. And eventually SMU got the lead. A reason that SMU got the lead as well was Nate Carroll's third down stop and a celebration after. I'm not a huge fan of taunting penalties. I'm really not. I think that you should allow players to taunt. I think they should be allowed to talk trash. I think that there has to be a line that you don't cross. But in general, it's typically pretty soft. That was a textbook celebration taunting call. It just was a textbook one. You can't do that if you're Nate Carroll. But all in all, that ended up putting points back on the board. And I think that might have been the same drive in which Kevin Jennings was just diming all the way. But let's get good. Let's get into the good moments because we've had 2 back-to-back down plays. I want to go to the interception. The interception by Jamel Johnson was a defining trait. You may be asking, Darian, which interception? Yes. Shout out to the Arlington native, right? AMA stand up. That's my city. So shout out to the Arlington native, Jamel Johnson. But the first interception he had, it wasn't the dagger. It wasn't the dagger, but it presented the dagger. And the dagger ended up being TCU's ability to just milk the clock. It ended up being TCU's ability to get ground control, get a first down, and waste this thing down to the 2-minute warning. That was the true dagger, but it was possible because of Jamel Johnson. When Jamel Johnson had his first interception, that was a moment in which SMU could have got back into the game. SMU could have scored a touchdown, could have made it a 1-point, or excuse me, a 1-score game. But Johnson's interception, at the worst, extended a 2-possession game. It gave TCU the ball back. They dripped the clock, and the offense did what they needed to. Because the offense still had more to do. I won't call it the dagger, but is there something a little bit less dull or a little bit duller than a dagger? Because this was a still big blow to SMU's chances of coming back. So you got to give credit to Johnson. And then he just capped it all off with a touchdown or the interception again. Then the last one is Eric McAlister and his third touchdown. I thought that was the play that, if you're judging it, felt like this is, all right, TCU's going to win this game. TCU's back on fire. TCU's back firing again on offense. And it feels like if SMU is able to go in and score, and we know that Jamel Johnson's interception kept that from happening. But if SMU was able to go in there and score, I felt complete confidence that TCU would have scored again. This game didn't go the way I thought it was. I thought it was going to be in the 30s. And I want to give credit to TCU's defense, which I don't think that enough people are doing. That secondary, and it's really underrated, but those nickelbacks, those safety close to the line of scrimmage, they did a really good job of tackling TJ Harden. I thought they did a good job of filling in those gaps. It's not something that's the sexiest move. It's not something that's going to be discussed often, but it was a series of plays just scattered throughout the game that really defined the matchup, because you were going to have to stop TCU, or excuse me, you're going to have to stop SMU's running attack. You were going to have to, and having defensive backs close to the line of scrimmage who are able to do it, to me, was key. It was critical, and it was very beneficial as it put more weight on Kevin Jennings. And like I thought, Jennings ended up running out of steam. The SMU offense ended up running out of steam. I love what I see from Jennings at times, but at the same time, you typically want a little bit more throughout the game as well. And I saw that today. Let's see if there's any other comments that maybe I missed. Agtown. All right. Come on now, Arlington, stand up. Definitely the brightest spot in the secondary. Yes. I love that. Promo, or not that promo, that what's it called? Profile picture. I love that. Johnson is a dog. 2 picks, 2 pass deflections all over the field today. Yeah, he was one of those defensive backs that I talked about tackling. This was a very good day. And one thing I want to say, and I've said this for a couple of days, this was a moment where the TCU secondary was going to be tested. A lot of people gave up on the TCU secondary going into this game. I think that was the wrong angle to take. The right angle was to sit here and be cautious. The right angle was to watch and monitor and say that this was a game that will really define how we talk about them. And I thought they did a good job. Yes, there was moments in which Jennings cut up the secondary. There was moments where SMU moved down the field. But as far as big plays downfield, you didn't see that a lot. Jamel Johnson was a big part of it. I thought that I can't think of the name right now, but yeah, you had some good moments. Now let me go up here to Hoover, because I don't want to forget. Does this hurt Josh Hoover's Heisman campaign? If you look at the stats, it looks great. I'm glad I started him in fantasy football, but the fluky 50-50 ball that was picked off already puts Hoover at 2. Okay, so I don't think that was a 50-50 ball. I'll also say that. I don't think that was a 50-50 ball. I think that Eric McAlister should have caught that pass. I think that it wasn't a high-pointed fade ball, but it was right where it needed to be. I would almost say great play by the defender. Definitely not the fault of Josh Hoover. So if you're going to go stats, I don't think it looks bad. Like you said, good stats. If you're going to go with the eye test of it all, I think that Hoover looked good. There was moments where it was up and down. But in general, I think that this would be a positive game for his Heisman case. It's still a lot. Look, the truth of the matter is that TCU needs to have a certain baseline as a team before you really start considering this Hoover for Heisman to be real momentum. This was a good step. It's a good way to establish yourself. When you play Friday against Arizona State on national TV, that'll be another stage to really say that at. But I can't say that it hurt his case. I would not say that at all. But Yes, he was being interfered with. He was being interfered with. Let's go with this one, and we're going to get out of here from Floyd G16. I ain't going to lie. Or excuse me, I ain't going to be able to get off this blood pressure meds messing with y'all. Great win. Yes, this was a little bit closer than I thought it was going to be, or a little bit lower scoring than I thought it was going to be. I thought it'd be this close, but I thought both teams might score in the 30s. But look, keep that medicine close to you. Make sure that you're right, because the Frogs are going to be in some fights this year, right? The Frogs are going to be in some fights this year. And on Monday, we'll talk about how this was the first roadblock for the offense. This was the first time that the offense really saw themselves hit a bump, and they still scored 35. That should have you extremely optimistic, and hopefully the T's have you extremely interested to turn in on Monday. We'll be back. We'll see if the top 25 rankings favor the Frogs. That'll be something that's very interesting. But we'll be back with another post-game post-game podcast on Friday night. I'm going to need a 5-hour energy for that. In the meantime, in between time, and until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.